All right, everybody. I'm not going to beat around the bush. This might be the best deck of any of these spotlight deck profiles that I've made so far. These have all been maybe not the most tested series of decks, right? This is kind of a format that we're all learning together. But my confidence in this deck profile is absolutely sky high because this character with Electric Jolt, with all the set one tools, absolutely bananas. So Amajiki, if you don't know what he does, at the start of your end phase, you may add one attack from your card pool to your momentum face up. Incredibly powerful ability. You know, you can't really deny this guy momentum. It's hard to deny it face up because his abilities rely on face up momentum. So once per turn, your attack gets plus, or this attack, I should say, gets plus X or minus X damage. X equals the number of your face up momentum plus 2. Not all your momentum, only the face up momentum, but the plus 2 does a lot of heavy lifting. Basically after your turn 2, you should have plus or minus 3 damage once per turn, which is pretty strong. But that number balloons to 5, 6, 7, 8 really quickly, especially once you start letting attacks deal damage to you. So the capstone ability here is once per game, you choose up to 3 momentum. If they're face up, you flip them face down, and then you get to unflip the momentum. So basically, you're refreshing the abilities on your momentum. You have to flip them face down as part of this effect for like the once per turns, like Vast Hybrid Chimera Kraken to be usable again. But it's mostly there for the cards like Electric Jolt, which you flip face down, use the ability, and then we're going to flip it up. So you have one super ultra powerful turn where you get to use all your momentum effects multiple times. And that makes this guy a little toolboxy, which is nice. But there are some really core elements to the deck. If you notice, this deck's spread out a lot. It's got a lot more one-ofs and little tech pieces and things like that because this deck really likes to be prepared for multiple threats, and it's really good at solving threats. So number one, the character's faces on the card, Vast Hybrid Chimera Kraken. This card is still a beating in MHA Spotlight. There's a lot more anti-stun cards. There's probably going to be people who play stuff like it can't be fixed. So you might not be able to steamroll stages the way that you might in standard just by committing one foundation. But being able to get rid of a problematic foundation is worth your opponent generating some face downs or reactively destroying one of yours or something like that. Whatever the stun hidden MHA ends up being that people play, it's almost certainly not going to be the correct one. The correct one is surprising skill. And the second correct one is heroic assistance because it lets you ready the things that got targeted commit. But not everyone's going to spot those. So Vast Hybrid, I imagine, is going to remain really good. Also, one of the only asset hate abilities, even if it's only for this turn, right? You got to have that one. And then the other really important cards is Claw Stopper. This is how you filter. This is your breaker attack. Without Rapid Speed Slash in the format, this guy gets bumped back up the premier card draw status, basically acting as a repeatable filter effect. This is not one that you're probably going to once per game on. The one that you're going to once per game on basically every time is Electric Jolt. This card is, I think, what makes Amajiki a powerhouse in this format. I think it's really what carried the character, and I think it's no surprise that after Electric Jolt rotated, you pretty much only saw like one more top cut appearance from an Amajiki, and it was being played by, I think, Jacob Johnson. So, he could probably make anything work. But this card, it pretty much always deals damage, which means it's pretty much always going to go to momentum, which means you pretty much don't need to use your character ability on it, which makes another card forcibly go to momentum. That already is like insane value for him. But on top of that, the flip target commit one rival foundation is such a good problem solving ability. Once you bank one of these in your momentum, it becomes really difficult for the opponent to even attack you effectively. One of the best plays you could make back in standard was to just stock up on jolts and eliminate the opponent stage on their turn. So you basically stun them on their turn. They're stunned on your turn again. You get the 2-turn cycle, and Amajiki being able to double up on that effect pretty much turns it into his win con every time. And speaking of win conditions, we got 2 indiscriminate shock 1.3 million volts. Just about any attack can wear the Amajiki damage bonus to become a winning threat. But indiscriminate shock, of course, combines so well with the electric jolts. and it works as a great feeler attack. It's also, I believe, the only low attack in the deck. Oh, we have Seafood Slugger, but it's the only really big low threat. So Blitz Rush is our high threat. It kind of doubles up the damage bonus from Amajiki, right? It gets +2 for each card in your momentum. And then you've got the high low zone threat. And these cards are only 2-in-1 copy because pretty much as soon as you play them, the game's over. Either your opponent solves it or they die. So again, any attack can pretty much wear the damage bonus, but these are the two obvious threats to go way over the top to kill 5-handers, to kill the really chunky 6-handers and things like that. But once you use Jolt and Vast Hybrid to kind of ruin their stage, it's going to come down to them having cards like Barrier Shield. It's going to come down to them having hand trap cards. And, that's, oh, sorry, I should also mention Frog Strike and Seafood Slugger. These are cards that seal. So anything you can't commit. This has stun on it as well to help out with the indiscriminate shock plan. But it also seals a rival foundation. So anything you can't commit, you can now seal. Seafood Slugger also has destroying rival assets or sealing rival foundation. So there's just a lot of technique here. There's a lot of tech pieces to get around the rivals cards. And then Zero Gravity Capture is the last attack. And this one's just here for it is a deadlock threat. Being able to just rip a card out of your momentum, super, super strong. You're almost always going to have one of your best attacks banked in momentum from an early poke turn. So late game, the deadlock made it on here, but also sometimes you just need a little bit of extra greasy damage pump. And this card counts for 6 damage with the once per game. So if this card makes it up into momentum, you can punish people who disrespect your offense much earlier than you normally could. Amajiki is normally a pretty late game sort of deck. Turn 4, turn 5 is solidly what we consider late game nowadays. So Zero Gravity Capture can just sort of turn that clock up a whole turn by being worth 6 damage in momentum. So we talked about how hand traps can slow you down. That's what Tattered Costume is here for. You also have Stopping for Breakfast in the sideboard. These are our anti-action cards for the air symbol. We've got Airy Smiles. This character doesn't block a whole lot, but between 4 copies of Release and Airy Smiles, you are definitely going to need to block to stay alive. So Release does a ton of work in this format. It basically carries these 3 symbols on defense, and being able to block as good as a deck with cards like Release and cards like Rifle Arm and cards like Rescue Completed, and on top of that have a big damage reduction to basically free block 1 attack. Absolutely insane. This guy can get established on defense really, really well. And then we have Sports Festival Champ to protect the damage pump. Once your opponent is completely, reduced their stage, absolutely annihilated, Sports Festival Champ can protect you against a lot of character effects. If you are in the Amajiki mirror, Sports Festival Champ is absolutely huge. If you're playing against characters like Nomu, Sports Festival Champ is huge. So I thought that including a couple copies of this was really, really solid, just because getting speed pump from Vast Hybrid is really easy. Getting things for like EX for Jolt, Jolt becomes a kill condition when you need the EX on it. So being able to sort of protect the damage felt really strong. Web of Blades is going to be huge in this format if you ever end up against a Momo or an Eraser head. -2 speed to all your attacks gets pretty much countered by Web of Blades. They'll still have ways to block, don't get me wrong. It's still going to take you a lot to get through their defenses, but this card is a lot. This card helps and does amazingly. And then on top of that, you'll have Adaptable. Enhanced Commit for +3 speed is pretty solid. Rifle Arm does that sometimes. But Adaptable does it based on your momentum, and you have this big deadlock burn effect. This is really how you're going to try to get past the Eraser heads and the Momos of the world. The later the game goes, the more you get to bank momentum essentially for free, right? You'll get the momentum for poking every turn, and eventually you'll have 10 cards in your momentum. You'll hit them 1 time and then burn them for the rest with Adaptable, which is really sick. So I felt like this one deserved to be in there. The sideboard, as always, is kind of fake here. It's a lot more of the same stuff. If your opponent hates on momentum, probably want Sun Eater of the big 3. If you need a big speed hate ability, if you're your rival really is, able to beat release for some reason, or able to beat, all the other speed reduction that you've got going on. Sunny to the big three is another big speed hate. Cheerleader, you're always going to have momentum. You don't want to spend it, but if you have to, cheerleader is the right type of defense that the air symbol can spend momentum on. Sports Festival Stadium, Face Shield is really annoying for this deck. Face Shield is one of the ways that your opponent can prevent you from adding cards to your momentum face up at the end of the turn. You can no longer see it as an attack during the end phase. So Sports Festival Stadium is here in the sideboard, but it's very risky. Most people don't want to play this card unless you can fast build it, because that extra +1 burn damage that you take, both players take that if you get hit, does end up kind of coming back to bite you, because you have to build it and then let your rival use it. So you do have to ask yourself, can I survive my rival getting +1 damage to all their attacks for the turn? But I think it's worth it against Face Shield specifically, and even against decks that might be using struggling with studies, like sort of reloop breakers or cheerful uppercuts and things like that. But mostly it's anti-face shield technology. And then Short Circuit has returned this non-charge attack to its printed damage. This is just in case you need to swap out some speed hate for some damage hate. You need a reset for damage. Air symbols got you covered. Other than that, I think we talked about everything except the stuff that adds more to momentum. I mean, Vast Hybrid is a 4 of, because it does everything Amajiki wants, right? It gets momentum. You get check bonuses to make up for debuilding. It adds a little bit of damage on the top end. Curious About Quirks is unfortunately the 1/5 draw card that Air gets in Spotlight. Glamour is another card draw effect. This is a way you can reduce your rival's attack down to like 1 damage. Then you commit. If this non-throw attack deals damage, you draw a card. That's absolutely amazing. Sometimes adding a mid block back to your hand is really important, and you can afford to do it in this deck. So that's there. Return of the Kings, you block low, you spend a momentum, you clear your card pool, you build this down. This one I would say is worth spending a momentum on, unless it's a Jolt or a Vast Hybrid. This is probably almost always worth spending momentum on. And it's just really solid. And again, it's another way to try and block, because as a 7-hander, you do need to actively play defense and block. You cannot solely rely on the damage reduction. It's combining speed hate, it's combining good blocking with good damage reduction. And the only thing this deck is really truly lacking is a ton of card advantage. I still got Destined for Mainstream on here, but that's not real card advantage. That's just, you need to poke early, and Destined for Mainstream is so good on early turns for being able to just like play 2 attacks. Play a 5, you risk it. Even if you check a 3, as long as you can flip Destined and guarantee the next check, you can always play that Jolt on a 5. And just having like 2 momentum and one of them is a Jolt on turn 2 is some of the best starts you can have for this deck. Destined smooths that out. I'm probably going to play this as a 4 of in every deck I play in Spotlight on these symbols. That's just my pet card, I guess. That's how I feel about it, but it's so good. Other than that, Incompatible Quirks is an amazing unique that just becomes exponential foundations in the late game, and this deck wants to kind of get to it. So let me know what you guys think. Is there anything I missed? Should I be playing a different symbol, Amajiki? I don't think so. I think it's Electric Jolt all the way down. I think Air Symbol gives me, a little bit more than Chaos in this format specifically. Again, I really dig Destined for Mainstream for specifically that purpose. You probably get a little bit better card draw and a little bit better card economy with struggling with studies, but I think Sports Festival Champ saying you can't reduce my attacks and I've, annihilated your stage so you can't block is a win condition. Let me know down in the comments below. How good do you think this Amajiki deck is?